Welcome back to the 1090 podcast. I'm here with Maui. Maui, can I just share a quick story
Absolutely.
about kind of how I know you and of your story? So I finally get into therapy with Matt Quackenbush, who I think you've seen as well.
Yeah.
And I was at a stage in my grief where I was very angry and felt very alone and didn't feel like anyone. I think that's part of grief is, or at least it was for me. Like I just went through this phase of like, you can't talk to me because you don't know what it's like. You don't have to walk in my shoes. Just kind of like not a good headspace to be in. Not very empathetic for anyone else. Because I think trauma makes you selfish. You just think about your loved ones that have died. Anyway, so I'm in therapy and I just kind of don't want to hear about anything. I'm just very mad and selfish. And Matt in our therapy session, he can tell this. Like he can tell like I'm being stubborn and just not in a good mood.
Yeah.
And so he's like, Mason, there's people that have sat in that chair that you're sitting in with stories just like you. And I was mad and I said, yeah, like what? Give me one. And he told me your story. And it like shut me up and it was so humbling. And I just from a couple of years later, like sitting in this chair now thinking like I remember it so vividly. And I think that matters because I don't remember a lot of things. We were just talking about this actually before we recorded. Like we can't remember stuff now because of the trauma. But I remember that moment and it was just so like, Mason, like you're not special in your grief. Like everyone's hurting actually. Anyway, your story has just stuck with me in a very meaningful way because of that moment I was in. And now here we are and get to have you on my podcast. And thanks for coming on and being willing to talk about it, dude.
Of course, man. It's funny how you feel like you were selfish in that moment, right? Like you almost want to be. You want to be. It almost feels like you're loving them more or something, right? Like it is a very selfish space, but I think you got to give yourself some of that space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was the same way with my
like,
story.
I don't want to hear your bullshit. Like, this is, oh man, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Yeah, I don't remember. I mean, I was in the same boat, so I was speaking. I saw a couple of different therapists. I was seeing Catherine Dixon and then Matt Quackenbush, and it was the same thing. I thought I was alone. I was in such a dark space, and then hearing other people's stories about losing their kids it just broke you apart again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, holy shit, there are tons of people out there suffering, and so I hate to be part of this group, but I'm glad to be part of this group.
Yeah, it's like the group no one wants to be in, but once you're in, like, yeah, there's people in this group that are amazing. Yeah. And connecting with them is one of the best things in life now, I think.
Yep.
That's why I started the podcast. Because, like, I think for people like us, like, the world already ended for us in a way. And so, like, when you live in a world where all the conversation is about, well, the world might end because of this and this, or this isn't good. And you're just like, it's already over.
Yeah.
So you don't really know how to, like, play the game. And, like, I don't know. Like, you've already seen the ending of the movie, and they haven't. They got an hour left. They're only halfway through, and you're like, I know the ending. Everyone dies.
Yeah.
We all die.
They have so much anxiety about it, and you're just like,
yeah, like,
okay, whenever it comes, let it come.
Yeah, man. Seriously. And I'm glad you can laugh about it because you have to.
There's nothing else, man. I feel the same way. Like, honestly, the only reason I'm here is because of the boys that I have here still. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know what else to do. I have to be there for them.
Yeah, do you ever get, like, compliments? Like, oh, you're so brave. And you're like, I don't know what else to do, though. Like,
yeah.
I don't feel that way.
People be like,
you're so
really
brave,
sad. You're so strong. Yeah. And I'm like, bro, I'm completely fucking wrecked. Like
Yeah.
I just have to wake up and like a robot do my thing to be here. It's nice of you to say that, but people always say, you know, the things that don't kill you make you stronger. I'm like, I can't agree with that.
Yeah, that doesn't
Things,
work in my situation.
no, the things that don't kill you make you wiser. But I'm not. I am fragile as hell.
Yeah.
I just put on the game face and wake up and just feel like you don't even think about it. You just get up and do.
I like how you said you put on the game face. Like, what do you mean by that?
Like you still have to go through the motions, or you don't. Right? I've already come to the conclusion that I'm not going to kill myself. Obviously, that still comes back into play, but the first initial wave of that is the strongest, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us that experience losing your children have that experience and could possibly plan it through. I planned mine through how I was going to do it. But once you make it past that, you have no other choice. You chose not to. You chose to be here. Whatever the reason was, you chose to be here. And like I said, it doesn't go away permanently. It'll come back. You know, the darkness is still there. The demons that we fight every day are still there. But that major first initial wave, I made it past that. So even though I don't want to wake up in the morning sometimes, I got to put on my game face and say, I chose to be here. So
Yeah.
that's what I got to do.
You mentioned you kind of passed this initial wave of maybe suicide ideation, but it still comes back. How often does that come back for you?
It's been 5.5 years since it happened. Maybe a couple times a year, but they're not as heavy. It's more like just when those times of years come around, the anniversaries and things like that, you don't really realize that your body's reacting without you thinking about it consciously.
Yeah.
And so you're already in a heightened state or fight or flight, and you don't realize it. And then life just stresses you out, and you're like, I just can't do this anymore. The hardest conflict for me is fighting to be with my son that's gone or be with my boys that are here. And it's a really shitty decision to make. You know what I mean? On one hand, we're not guaranteed to be with them. We have no idea. In this life, I can choose to be here with them. And so that's the biggest determining factor for me to stay here, is because I know for certainty I can be with them here. And I don't know if I'm going to be with him there. But it's always a constant fight because you just miss them so much, you know?
Man, I relate to this so well. I think part of the struggle of grief, trauma, is being in the moment, because just like you said, like part of you wants to be with those that have died, and you think about the past memories you have of them, or you think about the future that you're supposed to have with them. And so you're just not really thinking about being in the moment. And then on top of that, usually just the burden of grief, and then trying to numb the pain with alcohol, drugs, whatever it might be, it makes it so hard to be in the moment. And I'm with you. It's like I have to be in the moment for Blue, for my son that is living. I have to. And part of that is not just drowning in my grief all the time. Like I have to put on the game face, like you were saying, for my kid. Like I have to, because I am here and I am guaranteed today with Blue. So it's a balancing act. And it's so hard, like, because if you don't balance it the right way, grief will just summon shame and guilt.
Yep.
Like, oh, like you're not thinking about the dead ones enough, make you feel bad. And then if you think about them all day, you're like, oh, you're not in the moment for your living children now. So you're just kind of like, okay, how do I balance this?
It's one of the worst places to be.
It's
right?
one of the worst places to be.
It's a very, life's not fair, and I know that, but it's a very unfair thing that you have to deal with every day. That's You don't have a choice, right? Like you have to be here for them, like you said.
It's like acceptance. It's a daily battle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, oh, I accepted it a year later and now the rest of my life I'm living in acceptance. Like, or at least that's not how it is for me. Like,
no,
some days I just can't get out of bed still, and I'm like, that. Fuck this. Like,
listening to some of your podcasts, I related with a lot. I can tell when you're speaking with people that shame and guilt is still there every day, and I have that a ton, and that's probably the biggest demon that I have is the guilt. Where their father, we're supposed to protect him, and just not being able to coming to a realization that you can't 100% protect your kids no matter what. You can't be with them 24/7. I suffer through that often, and I related to you a lot. Hearing you talk about stuff, I can tell where your pain's at for the most part, and it's in the same place.
I have a big part right there of, that's our job, is to protect them, and we didn't. And that's a day-to-day, that's the daily thing I deal with.
Yep.
And then, like, my brother was in the car. So, like, if I went, my brother probably wouldn't be dead. So, like, that's a lot of guilt that I carry, too. And it's weird because, like, people can tell you all the right things and you can do it. But, like, it's still, like, the facts are, like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, in your heart it's not your fault.
Right.
But no matter what, your mind, it just fucks with you all the time.
Yeah, because I think it's like, I think it's because we're currently being a dad still with, and so we're like, oh yeah, I got to protect him. And it's like, well, why couldn't you? Like, it just, it's just constantly in our face, I think.
Yeah.
Just laughing at us. It sucks. Can we get to I don't want to get to the day of, can we talk about your family dynamic a little bit? And then we can kind of get to the day of. Is that okay?
Yeah, we can talk about anything, bro.
All right, let's do it. So, you're kind of a troublemaker growing up in high school. You're a football player, popular kid, got in trouble. Is that kind of where you want to start or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. I don't know. You hear the story all the time. How you grew up poor and you got a chip on your shoulder, and I played football, but I wasn't part of the jocks because I didn't have money. My family didn't have money, right? So the only reason why they were cool with me is because I was on the football team. You know how it is. You played sports, but I didn't get along with them in their outside of football. They were the guys that picked on everybody, and I was the guys that would fight them when they're picking on other people. I don't like that. Like, I just don't. I guess it's because of my insecurities, right, of growing up poor and always being insecure about stuff, and I can't speak for them, but, the preps in school, for me, it seemed like they had money, they had good parents raising them up. I had good parents, but we just didn't have a lot,
Yeah.
So I always had this stupid chip on my shoulder. So I was a troublemaker. Got kicked out of school, didn't graduate, had to get my GED later, but just a troublemaker, fighting and drinking and smoking weed and instead of being in school.
You are one pathetic loser.
I know, right? I should have just gave up then.
Oh, no. Maui.
You're good, bro. That stuff doesn't.
What position did you play football?
I was a second string quarterback, defensive end, tight end, and second string quarterback.
Oh man, you were everywhere.
Yeah, I wasn't great. I was just okay,
It's dude. When you talk to people who have lost a kid, the ego is out the way. Like, like I bet before you're like, oh, I mean, I was pretty good. If coach would have put me in, we would have won state. And then I pulled my hamstring.
It was the last play.
But now you're like, it was like whatever. Like, who fucking cares?
Yeah,
like, that's so good.
So
Cracking
true,
you.
man.
All right, so you're getting through the high school years, making some mistakes.
Yeah, I got in trouble with the law. Got arrested a few times. I decided to move to Utah. So this was in Oregon. I decided to move to Utah when I was about 19. My parents got divorced when I was 14. My dad moved back to Hawaii. My mom moved to Utah. She remarried a guy that she met on LDS dating, whatever. I don't know what it was. It was like barely internet back then. You know what I mean? It feels
Yeah,
like.
seriously.
Remarried a guy from here. I stayed in Oregon. So I couch surfed from when I was 14 until like 19. And then I was, for some reason, drawn to be like, I got to be around my mom. She's getting old. She wasn't really getting old, but to us in high school, you're like, old is old.
Yeah. I remember when I thought 33 was old.
Yeah.
And now here I am.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah. So I moved to Utah and then met my first born's mom. We started dating. We decided to have a kid. And after Kyrrus was born, it was just life changing. It's almost like I mean, if you're in the right place, right? There's a lot of parents out there that shouldn't call themselves parents, but if you have a good heart and a good head, and man, when he was born, it was just that's what life was about. That was what was important, you know.
yeah, the perspective shift you have all of a sudden
Yeah.
is like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden you're like backseat.
Yeah.
Like your life's not about you anymore. And it's like a good feeling, but like scary and exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. He was a good kid. His mom and I didn't work out. She ended up moving to Vegas when he was 2.5, 3 years old. Maybe, yeah, anyway, 2.5 maybe. And so he stayed here with me. And I married someone. I met somebody else. She had a 2-year-old boy. Kyrrus was 2. We raised them together. We got married. So my stepson he's 20 now. So Kyrrus would have been 20. But we raised them together until Kyrus's mom Rachel moved back to Utah and had a new boyfriend. And we thought he was from Vegas, but his family and he was from Virginia. I didn't know what his mom was doing out in Vegas and stuff like that. But so she moved back to Spanish Fork, and Kyrus missed his mom and asked if he could go live with her now that she's here and I can, just take him whenever. So we planned that and got into the fact that his mom wanted to move to Virginia, where her boyfriend was from. And I didn't want Kyrus to go. She and I decided that we would leave it up to Kyrus. He was 13, 12 and a half, 13, and he wanted to stay here. All his friends were here. He played football. I got him into football since I can't remember how old they were when you can first put them in, but
Yeah. The pee-wee age.
yeah. And so he played tackle football all throughout. And so he decided he wanted to stay here with me. I was grateful for that, happy. And then all of a sudden the day before, I get a call from her saying, "Hey, we got plane tickets. Everything's packed. We're up and going to Virginia. Kyrus is going." And I think back and I thought I was trying to do the mature thing and show Kyrus that his mother and I can get along and make mature decisions. And I agreed because I didn't want Kyrus to see. I didn't want to cause a huge blow up argument about it. She said there's better football programs out there and things like that. His goal was to go to the league, right? So I supported it, and I told him I would come out and visit as much as I can. So they up and moved, and it was heartbreaking. I was only able to go out and visit him a couple of times a year. And after that first year, I was like, I can't do this. I can't be away from him. My wife and I were divorced. So I decided to up and move to Virginia. I didn't know anybody or anything about Virginia, but I needed to be around Kyrrus. And so I moved out there. And a year later, if that, then all this stuff went down. So
I didn't know you were living in Virginia when it happened.
yeah.
Man, I like it how, I mean, I don't like it, but every time we have someone on here and they start talking about their story, they usually just mention all these other things that are hard for them, like parents' divorce, and then the divorce that you had. Like, there's so much going on. Man, I love, like, being a dad is the best, though. Like, willing to move to Virginia because the bond you have with your son, with Kai. Can we get to the day of?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So you're in Virginia now with them. How far away do you live from your ex-wife?
Maybe 10, 15 minutes.
So pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just staying in an Airbnb, a long stay Airbnb, until I got a place there. And they just bought a new house. And so they were fixing up the house and things like that.
Did you just get like a job? Like you just applied for whatever job?
I was working at Target.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I just transferred stores.
So they were able to hook you up?
Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
So I was working out there, working to promote, trying to make more money to get him into, like, pay for his college and stuff like that. But he would have got a full boat anyways. But
he was good.
He was good.
What position did he play?
He's a halfback.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's fast, agile. He's
physical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the smile on your face is so good, man.
Dude, I loved watching him play football.
Yeah.
I don't know if he initially got into it. I mean, I'm sure he initially got into it because I was like, yeah, football's so awesome. Football's the best. And then he got into it, but then he really loved it. And he just excelled, man. He was always the fastest kid on the field. He was just so many touchdowns running in. I'm the dad running down the sideline with him, screaming my head off. And
go, Kai, go.
And, you know, it was probably a little bit of like, shit, I wish I was good in football. And so I'm so glad my son is, you know.
Sure.
I was very proud. In fact, his best friend now out in Virginia, he has a full boat at college, and that was their plans to go because they were on the same team, and he would have went for sure. Yeah. So, sorry, where are we at? We getting into the day of?
Yeah. So you're in Virginia, working at Target, live about 15 minutes away from ex-wife.
Yeah. The one thing that I regret now, because not knowing anything about his mom's boyfriend, I was trying to put my faith into his mom of making all the right decisions that was best for Kyrrus. At this time, she has 2 babies with him now. So Kai has 2 younger siblings living with them as well. She just told me he owned a couple of different businesses, this and that. She didn't have to work, so I was happy that she was always available for Kyrrus and the kids. And so I trusted her in making those right decisions. And I didn't realize that he was a coke dealer. And she was just kind of there to raise his kids, you know what I mean? But it's Memorial Day weekend, I think. I'm working. It's retail. I work all the time, right? It doesn't matter, holidays. I couldn't get a hold of Kyrrus for almost like a whole day. I'm texting him, no response, and I'm like, chalk it up to him being a teenager. He's got a girlfriend. He's got friends. He's getting a life. You know, he ain't got all the time for dad anymore.
Yeah, he's reaching that age where it's like, dad's not very cool anymore.
Yeah,
like, I can't be seen with dad.
Right?
Like,
and plus, he never charged his phone anyways. It was always
typical
dead.
Teenager, yeah.
And so I wasn't stressing too much. But the next morning, I couldn't get a hold of him. And so I start trying to get a hold of his mom, and I can't get a hold of her. And my mind's just going. And I'm like, I try calling her, and I don't get a response. And my mind just kind of started taking over. My body started reacting. I started feeling just dread, sick, worried.
Are you coming up with scenarios of what's happening? Like,
yeah, but my mind was trying to protect me in a way. It was like, well,
it's fine.
yeah, they
Like,
take trips out of state all the
yeah,
time.
he
And
didn't charge his phone, and she doesn't have service. Like,
yeah,
you're just kind of,
constantly it's telling me stuff to just, it's all right. It's going to be okay. And so I was like, I'm going to wait the night. I have the day off tomorrow. I'm going to go pick him up. We're going to go do something. And I'm just feeling sick all night. And I finally get to bed. And I wake up and I'm just sick to my stomach. Like, just, it was really weird. It was just one of the worst feelings. I felt sick, but I knew I wasn't sick. I was just really worried. I tried contacting him again. I couldn't. It was about 9 in the morning. I was like, fuck it, I'm just driving over there. I'm just going to drive over. I'm going to pick him up. We're going to go eat. We're going to go do something. I just want to be with him today. And so I'm driving over there, and my mind's still trying to tell me, hey, everything's going to be all right. When I'm pulling up into the driveway, all their vehicles are still there. And so, well, first of all, one of the weird things is, so they kind of have this driveway that goes through these trees to their house back in this wooded area. And their mailbox is out in the front. And it's like one of those that has like 5 or 6 mailboxes on a big post. And I swear that when I pulled in there was 3. At the time, I thought they were vultures. I had no idea Virginia had vultures, which they do. There was 3 that took off of the mailbox and flew into the sky. And I was just like, fuck, like, still trying to tell myself everything's all right.
well, but you remembered like those birds vividly.
Yeah, I remember seeing them. And then pulling up to the house, all the vehicles are there. They were raising pit bullies. You know what those are? Little pocket-sized pit bulls. The little stubby ones.
Yeah, okay.
So they were raising dogs. They got plenty of dogs. And then their main dog, Capone, which is one that I remember them getting when Kai was young. He was there too. And usually when I pull up, one of the little bullies comes up and he'll like try and gnaw on my leg and stuff. And it's whatever. But the dogs were just kind of walking, like just wandering around outside. And I was like, just so much of it was not normal.
Yeah.
And I get out of my car and I usually go to the side door. It's their kitchen door, but it's all glass. And I go knock on the door. It's about 9:30 in the morning. The sun's coming up. And so the sun's reflecting on the glass. I can't see through the door at all. I'm knocking. Nobody's answering. I decide to peek through. And when I peek through and cover the sun on it, her boyfriend is face down laying in the kitchen. I can't see much through the glass, but I know it's him. I know he's laying on the kitchen floor. And it was so weird, man. My mind was just like telling me all this shit to try to make everything okay. It was like, oh, they're playing some sick joke on you or some shit. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, thinking about it now, I'm like, why the fuck would anybody play some? And he also had Crohn's. I was like, maybe he passed out, maybe something. I don't know. I don't know him that much. I don't know how bad his Crohn's was. I don't know how it affects people. And so the door was locked. And so I go around to the front door and I start knocking on the front door. And my guts and my adrenaline is just cranking. Knocking, nobody answers. And I test the door and it's unlocked. And so I open the door. And I remember the silence was deafening. It was so silent in there, and my adrenaline was so spiked that I could hear fucking anything, but I heard nothing. It was a deafening silence, and when you step in, Their living room's here, and then the kitchen's to the right, and then there's a hallway on the left, and their bedroom's back to the right. Their bedroom door is open, and her baby girl, was in the swing, still in the swing. She's like 6 weeks old. And I look over in the kitchen, and her boyfriend was bound. His hands were bound behind his back. He's face down in a huge puddle of his own blood. And at that point, there was no like, this is a joke, this is a game. It was just fucking panic. And so I start calling for Kyrrus. I step in a little bit. And then to the left on the hallway was Kyrus's room in the bathroom. His bathroom was directly across the hall from his bedroom. I remember stepping closer to the bathroom and seeing his feet on the floor. He had the same exact feet, same exact legs as I do. I knew it was him. And so, I got closer to the bathroom, and he was, his hands were bound, his feet were bound. He had a rolled up shirt as a gag on him, and he was face down in his blood. And the smell of blood was just overpowering. And at that moment, I was verbally telling myself, I was like, this isn't fucking real. I don't know how to explain it. I tend to always explain it as I felt like everything just broke inside of me. My mind wasn't connecting with my body, and it was just I didn't know what to do. And his younger brother was in his bedroom with the door shut. His younger brother's a year and a half, and so I can hear him in the room crying. His mom was down the hall in the nursery with her hands bound, her feet were bound. She had a belt tied around her neck. And all three of them had their throats slit. And I couldn't do anything. I ran out of the house and I called 911. I couldn't hold my son. I couldn't get the babies. I couldn't. I couldn't do anything. I panicked and I ran out and I called 911. And, the operator's asking me where I am. And I'm like, I don't fucking know the address. I don't know. I was trying to remember the street name. Read the numbers off of the front of the house, I think. She's asking me to go in and try to resuscitate. And I'm like, he's fucking gone. He could tell they've been gone for a minute. You know what I mean? I couldn't bring myself to go back in to see my son. I wanted to hold him so bad. But I couldn't. I couldn't even pull myself to go back in. And I waited outside until the cops showed up. And then after that, it was just, all the investigation stuff and getting taken down to the sheriff's office. And the babies made it. They were in there for 2 days, dead. Summertime, Virginia. It was apparent that they were dead for a while. The baby's diapers were just overloaded, infection. The baby girl, 6 weeks old, she didn't have anything to eat for 2 days. She survived. a boy survived. My boy didn't, of course, but it was his family. It was his nephew, her boyfriend's nephew, was in the drug game up in Philadelphia. He would connect through his uncle. He decided one day he was gonna bring his hired pieces of shit people to come down and rob him. And I don't know if the robbery went wrong. I don't know if he planned this whole thing, but anybody that was old enough to be a witness was dead. There was 5 people in total. 4 guys went into the house. One of them was just a driver. But
I'm so sorry, man.
me too.
One thing for me is like I just, and you know, this is much harder for you. I just want to be clear, but there's like a part that really sticks with me daily. It's just I wasn't there, so it's just a guessing game for me. Like in their last moments, like how much pain was there? What did they see? Are you haunted by that daily, or like?
Yep.
Yeah. And what do you do with that?
For the longest time before they got caught, to hear exactly what happened in court.
Wait, I'm sorry. So you went to court and you saw everyone that was charged with this, and you saw them.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Because,
Yep.
like, what is that like?
So it took them, I can't remember how long, over a year to find all these guys, bring them in. And then they had a trial. And I was actually called up to be the first witness. And as a witness, there's a chance that the defending attorneys can say, yeah, we don't need him in court anymore or not. And that was honestly my biggest worry. Like, I was nervous to see these guys, but I was nervous to see these guys because I didn't know how I was going to react. And then next I was nervous because there was a chance that the attorneys on the defending the scum could say, okay, he's done with his statement. He doesn't need to be in court anymore. And there was a chance legally I couldn't be in the whole through the whole trial. And I was like, that's not like I couldn't. But I was able to. That was just, it was a really big worry to me because for some reason I needed to hear what happened from their mouths, you know.
I think that is like, wow. Like, why do you think you needed to hear it? Just for?
Because there was so many questions in my mind and it was just driving me fucking crazy on what happened. What did he go through? What did she go through? I don't give a shit to this day about her boyfriend. I usually don't hate people. I'm glad he's not here. I needed to hear what happened because my mind was just coming up with scenario after scenario after scenario.
I mean, we just talked about it. It's like a daily demon that you're thinking of, like, and so I do think, yeah, you needed clarification, and that might help the daily battle of the hell you're putting yourself through.
Yeah.
So I guess it makes sense. It's just such a hard thing to do. But I guess like you're so full of anger too. Like that's probably why you wanted to show up too. Like fuck these guys.
Yeah, for sure. I remember hearing you talking on one of your podcasts about anger and how you're so angry that all these other emotions come afterwards, right? And I was so maybe I was so angry. I was so fucking heartbroken that I couldn't see past my sadness. I couldn't. It was just like
There's nothing else.
no.
It consumed every part of you. Like there's nothing else to do to think about.
And so I'm sure I was angry, and well, I'm still angry at these people, but I don't remember being ragey angry. I remember just being consumed with sadness. My grief just that destroyed me, man. That was sad. But going into court and everything like that, I was afraid I was going to be one of those people on the court and cams where they run and they dash the people and they try and get what they can get in. And
Like rightfully so, though. Like
yeah, there's also things that happen in court that like I didn't want any little thing to interrupt the possibility of these guys getting put away forever or death penalty, right? And I talk with Kai all the time. I try life gets so busy now. I don't find myself doing it as much as I used to, but I talk to him every day, and I was like, how am I supposed to go into court and not, try and brutalize these people, right? I just, the biggest feeling for me was Kyrrus was such a loving kid to everybody and always so happy, and I had to show up like that. I had to show up for him the way he sees his dad. I never wanted him to see me be violent or so angry. I'm out of control. And so I decided, within whatever control that I had, that I needed to be present for him. I needed to be there for him. And so it was hard, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And I went in and I was able to not physically attack them. I mean, I couldn't stop staring at them. And like even my impact statement that I read, like I tried to be as impactful as possible, I guess, for lack of words. And I wanted to be just so demeaning and everything, but I didn't want anything to be objectified or, in court, oh, objection, this and that. And their lawyer tried to object with some of my statement, but I didn't have any cuss words or anything like that. And it was just letting them know how pathetic and like the culture that they grow up in and the culture that they continuously teach to the younger kids and all this kind of shit is it's disgusting and pathetic. And I mean, you should have seen their parents. These guys were kids. They were like 20-somethings. And their parents are still dressed the same, dressed like them, and trying to be in their rap videos and this and just a bunch of bullshit. Like this fake facade that they're living their life. Like I ran the streets when I was young, and I'm thinking in my head, and I'm like, but you grow up at some point. You realize at some point that life isn't about this dumb shit like this. But they don't, because their parents are like that, and their parents are like that, and their parents are like that. So it was more of a just how pathetic these people are, and I'm not trying to give them an out, an excuse of why they're such pieces of shit, but like they don't fucking know any better. They're just trash. And they live in filth and trash, and that's what they do, and that's their everyday life. And for some reason, they glorify that and think it's so cool. And yeah, we sell dope on the corner and this and that, and like that stuff makes me angry. I don't want to keep talking about that, but it's.
But you said all this like in court.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think you talked for?
I don't know, man. So I got called up. I was the first witness to be called up to start the whole trial because I was the first person on scene. And then we kind of went in order. So I spoke at the beginning with my statement, and then sitting through the trials, and then towards the end of the trials, before the judge gives the judgment out, all the victim impact statements can be read. And then I think mine was like, I don't know, 3 pages maybe.
What did the judge decide? Like, what happened?
So all 4 of the people that went into the house have multiple life sentences with no chance of parole. So they're in there for life. The driver ended up getting, I can't remember, he got quite a few years, but he was just kind of the drop-off kid, dropped him off, drove the car away, waited, came picked him up. He never entered the house, so he got less. I was hoping for the death penalty, but it wasn't. They couldn't prove that it was premeditated, that they were going to do the slaying. They handled it to where it was a robbery gone wrong. So it wasn't, the murders weren't premeditated. They couldn't prove that they were premeditated. If they were premeditated, then they could have got the death penalty. But
You think this is gonna sound weird, but like showing up at court and doing that, do you think you liked it in the fact that that was a chance for you to show up for Kai and do that? Like, did that give you any? I mean, I know like overall it's just the worst imaginable experience, but like, I guess what I'm getting at is like when I do public speaking, and I'm not trying to compare that to showing up to court, like it's not the same. But I do love public speaking because I do feel like I'm showing up for them in a way because I didn't show up for them the day of the car crash. I wasn't there. So I feel like it's kind of this sad thing I'm doing that I'm trying to like do whatever I can to like actually be there.
yep.
And I was just curious, just listening to your story, like as bad as this moment is for you, I just wonder if like that gave you a feeling. I had the same feeling at the funeral of like, I'm going to talk as well as I can for them because they deserve it. And it's all I can do in this moment is talk about them. So I'm going to try and give the best. Like, I do remember having those thoughts. And I don't know, I just wanted to ask you that when you're telling me this because I do think maybe you had that feeling for Kai, like I'm going to show up and fight for him.
Yeah. I wanted to do everything that I could to get justice for him and his mom. And I do. Anytime I speak about them or what happened, I do feel that way. I feel like I'm doing something for them. Like, a lot of people are like, well, you don't have to change the world to to represent them and in a, but I want to be able to do something like that. It gave me that feeling that I'm doing this for them. Does it make anything better? No. But it makes my heart feel better. It makes me feel closer to them. It makes me feel like I'm still doing something for them.
I related so much when you said you speak to Kai every day, and you said like maybe not as much as I used to, but like I relate to that so much because I talk to them all every day too. And so again, like I think it's just different because when you're talking to him all the time and then you go do something for him like what you just did, it's such a different experience. Like there's real dialogue here happening with Kai. Like, and then you talk to him about, I'm sure you talked to Kai about how the trial went. Like, hey, I hope I did good enough for you. I hope, or maybe you didn't, but like that's the stuff I do. I love that you said that because I feel like a crazy person sometimes. Like I just talk to dead people all day.
Yep.
And no one knows that I do that in my own head. And so, like, when you said that, I'm like, yeah, like, you just talk to him. And I that's something that I do, too.
It's like unapologetically, too, huh? It's just like...
Do you ever like, I'm starting to do this with Courtney, like, I'll argue with her. Like we used to when we were married, like, in my self-talk. Like if I skip a song on shuffle that she likes, she's like, "Really? You're not gonna listen to?" I'm like, "All right."
Bro,
Like we're
yes,
like arguing. Like okay, like oh man, like it's so weird, but I love it.
Yeah, I have a
So much.
conversation with him like that. Not about the music thing, but it's like when I know I should be doing something and I'm not, and I'm just sitting on my ass because I just don't want to do anything. I just feel like shit, right? And that's all I can think about. I know he's sitting next to me and he's like, Dad, you gotta get up,
Yeah,
man.
what are you doing?
Go do something. And then I will have that dialogue with him. It's like, I just fucking can't.
Yeah. Or a couple days and you feel bad. Like I don't want to be happy anymore. Like I'm sick of the. Yeah, and we were talking about that earlier, like the balancing act.
Yeah, and you don't want to be happy, right?
You don't want to be
Exactly.
happy, but then they're like telling you to be happy. Like go be happy, and you're like okay, and then you're like, I don't want to be happy.
Yeah, I want to be here with you, and
Yeah,
I'm sorry that it makes me sad, but when I'm happy, I don't know what it is. I don't know why being sad gives me that gratification of feeling like I'm with them. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean that's grief. I think.
It sounds terrible, right?
It is like grief's terrible. It is terrible.
It sounds terrible. It's like, hey, yeah, when I'm sad, I feel closer to them. It's like, well, when I'm really sad, it's because I'm really intently thinking of them. And it gives me some sort of peace, I guess.
Man,
it's not productive at all.
You're just really speaking my language right now. Like this is how it is, though. Like
I know I related so much to you and how you were speaking in all your podcasts.
So what do you do? Because what do you do with this conflict of let's be happy, but I don't want it? Like, what do you do? Because then
in the moment, I just cry. I cry. I let it consume me and I sit in it. And I'm not productive and I don't do anything productive and I waste my time and I do nothing and I sit in it and stew in it. And as bad as that may sound to all you therapists out there, I'm sorry, but I have to sit in that. And it makes it to where if I'm out in public or at work, I mean, I still have times at work I have to step into my office because it's hard. But
do you ever do like the 30-second cry? Like just go to the bathroom, cry, and then wash up and just head back out and just act like everything's okay?
No, I don't find myself doing that a lot unless it's at work because I'm like, shit, I have to get back out to the floor. If it's times when I have my 3-year-old with me, I'll cry openly, but I'll hold him and I'll play with him while I'm crying. I don't have short bouts when I'm outside of work. Work just makes me feel like I'm forced to have those 30-second cries,
Yeah.
and it's just like shit. But if it's too bad, then I'll go home. You know, I am more accepting of how emotional I am nowadays.
You remind me of one of the very first people I had on my podcast was his name is Fred Yogo. He's from Kenya, and he talked about his. He's been through a lot, but he said, "Walk as you cry," and that's something that I like. That's just something I'm feeling from you is you just cry, you feel it, but walk as you cry, meaning like you're still here, haven't taken your own life, you're still showing up to work. You continue to live with the pain is what walk as you cry. But crying is important because it's the balancing act. Like you're showing sadness and grief and respect to what happened. And if you don't do that, I think what's going to happen is shame and guilt's just going to take over later. Like, why aren't you thinking about them? Right. Like we've talked about earlier. But I like that quote a lot. And that's just something that I feel from you is just, it's sad. It sucks. I don't want to be happy, but walk as you cry because that's what Kai would want me to do. I have a question for you. I'm seeing what you saw is traumatizing, and it can have lasting effects on your life. Are you? would you prefer never to see the scene? Like you never saw him ever and you just got called and like, hey, like the bodies are away? Or as bad as it is and as terrible as it was, and are you still um like what would you pick? Would you want to see that or not? Is what I'm trying to ask.
I think that's a hard question to answer. I think you you just don't know unless one or the other happens. But for the first while, I had nightmares and I couldn't sleep. I had to get medicated. Still on medication to sleep, but I would have nightmares for probably the first couple of months. I would have to drink myself to sleep, and when my life gets really stressful, those nightmares come back of seeing him. Just recently, actually, this last week, there was 2 nights that I couldn't sleep because I was having those nightmares and kept waking up, and I couldn't initially fall asleep because that's when the pictures come in. And but I'm also grateful that I am the one that got to see him and find him. He's my son. That's so much pride of being a father, right? Like, and so I'm grateful, but I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't know if I can give you I would prefer one over the other because I hate the nightmares. But not seeing him would have been tough because when we did, so after the bodies were taken to the mortuary, he could pay a little extra and they would clean the body up, and then you could see them before he got cremated. We ended up cremating him. And I did that. And so whatever family could fly into Virginia would come and see him. And when I went into the room to see him, and I went to his body, he was not there. He wasn't there. And I knew that. And I knew this was just a body. And I touched him and I didn't feel him. And I didn't feel him. I knew he wasn't there. It was just something that I think I even said that to my ex-wife when me and her and I went up first to see him, and I was just fell apart. I was like, he's not here. He's not. I knew he wasn't there. I could feel his body. I could kiss his body, and he wasn't there. It's not him. I don't know where he was, but he wasn't there, and I didn't feel that. You know, some people hang on to the body and they just their connection is there, but I knew he wasn't there. I felt he wasn't there, and it was very detached almost. Like, you know your kid. You, you don't just pick up Blue and hold him. Like, you know he's there. His consciousness,
Right.
who he is, right? You can feel that. I can feel his soul. It just wasn't there. And sorry, I'm going off on this tangent, but
No, man, I love it.
yeah, I don't think I can answer you. I can't tell you one way or the other.
Yeah, I just ask because like I'm in a weird spot where I wish I saw more. I think, but then then I listen to stories like you, and I'm like, oh my god, like the nightmares you have to live with. Like there's real serious bad things that come from it. So and then just trying to help people when they deal with when they lose a kid or a spouse, like, should they see the body? Just trying to help them navigate that part of it. Because I had no idea what to do when I was experiencing it. But I love your answer because I think it is just a combination of both. That seems to be the theme with a lot of things with grief is it's both together. And that's something that Matt taught me in therapy is he's like, Mason, you're going to be sad the rest of your life, but you can also try to be happy. You deserve that and need that. It's going to be both. And that's helped me too. Where were you at like after this happened, talking about it? You're on this podcast. I know you've been on Matt's podcast, therapy. How long did it take for you to talk about it, or what was that like for you?
Man, it was... So the first couple of months, I don't remember much. I just numbed.
Man,
like drugs and alcohol.
This is me, dude.
It was like I don't remember much of it at all. It was just a haze, and I moved back to Utah. Shit, I can't even remember how long it was after. I ended up moving back to Utah and staying with my ex-wife at her house. She had an extra room, so I stayed in the extra room. And shortly after, I was recommended from a friend to see Catherine Dixon. And she helped me start to be able to talk about it. I don't think I talked about it at all for the first while. Like I said, it's pretty hazy. I can't fully remember that much, but I don't think I spoke about it until I was able to open to Kevin Tenney.
Yeah, I've had him on.
With him losing Brighton, that was the first time I spoke to somebody that lost a child. And it was so easy to open up and share because I knew for a fact he's going to know my pain, right? And when you speak to somebody that has that empathy, because they've experienced the same thing, that was the first time I was able to start talking about it, and that was, I can't remember how long ago that was. And then Kevin, with the Brighten the Day Foundation, he's the one that told me all these other stories where I was able to be like, holy shit, I'm being selfish with like, it's my story and this.
So you or me, you kind of had the same thing. Like, wait a minute, wow,
the same.
I think one of the things, if you like, you were able to open up with the Tennies because they lost their kid Brighton, and I think why that is when someone knows your pain, you're going to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it because for people like me and you, to talk about it is so hard because it's the worst thing and it makes it very real and blah, 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 blah. And so if you have the thought of like, if I open up and talk about this and I'm not heard, like it falls on deaf ears, like I'm going to be destroyed.
Yeah.
And when you're talking to someone that has the similar pain, I think that fear goes away. Like I'm going to be heard.
Because they're going to have the same reverence.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's why it makes it, when you find people similar to you, that's why I love podcasting, is you find people that are similar to you, and it's so much easier to talk to because you're going to be heard and you're kind of in the same ballpark with what you're talking about. And it's just it's a beautiful connection. I don't think I've ever connected with people like I have, like when I talk about grief.
Yep.
The human connection is so cool. I don't know if that's the best word, but it's
profound, right?
Yeah, it's so strong and palpable, like,
and immediate too. It's
immediate, and it's like, I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your nationality is. I don't like none of that
matters.
Like it's just all
anymore.
Like, wait, what? Like that goes all out the window. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care if you're rich, poor. Doesn't matter all of a sudden.
Yep.
And that's another thing I love about it too is
the perspective you get.
Yeah, like
the perspective of what's truly important in life.
And dude, like grief sucks. Like you'd rather have Kai back. I'd rather have my family back. But there are like things that grief has taught me and I've learned that I am grateful for her. But I think I only got those because I've been able to talk about it and feel the pain, and that's what's given me some of the strength, I think.
Yeah, hearing you speak, I feel like you can speak with a lot more strength than I can, but I know you've spoken about it a lot more, right?
Yeah.
So having this opportunity to speak again and on this platform and everything, it's I knew it was going to be hard, but I welcome it because I know the more I speak about it, the better, the easier it's going to be to talk about it.
And don't tell me you haven't had a couple smiles today too, talking
Oh
about
yeah,
Kai. Like
dude.
it is
Oh
like,
yeah,
yeah, there's some happiness in all that misery.
for sure. That's another shitty question, right? People are like, "Would you take it all back?" The issue with that question is if you take it all back, you have to deduct everything because of what changed you to what you have now, right? And so, like, I wouldn't have my 3-year-old son now. And so it's one of those like unfair questions, right?
Yeah.
I hate being asked that because I'm like, well, of course, obviously, yeah, I would take it back. But with me answering that, honestly, that takes Ezekiel away from me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's such a shitty place to be. You're like, I can't
No,
answer you.
yeah, and I feel bad. Like, obviously, yeah, I'd do anything to have him back, but like that doesn't make Sammy feel good. Like it, and that's why I love the 1090 quote is listen, it happened. Done deal.
Yep.
So what are you gonna do now? And based on how you react and how you respond to it, different things are gonna develop and you're gonna have different relationships and new kids. That doesn't mean you wouldn't go back and change the 10%,
Right.
but that's life. It happened, man. So what do you
Yeah.
want me to do? How are the kids that survived the slaughter? How are they doing? Can you give us a quick update there
Yeah,
if
they're
you
doing
can?
great.
And sorry, can you give us the ages again? So
Yes.
it was,
So the baby girl was 6 weeks old,
and she was the
and
one in the swing,
hmm
and she was just swinging there in silence.
yeah, yeah, she didn't have any more in her to cry.
I bet, like she's just
Um, and the boy was a year and a half, and he was locked in Kyrrus's room for 2 days without his mom. So, but they're great. They got adopted by Rachel's brother, so Kyrus's uncle adopted them. They're here in Utah.
nice.
Great couple. Nick, Kyrus's uncle, great man. His wife is amazing. They already have 3 children themselves. They took them on. It's they're doing really good. The boy struggled with speaking for the first little while. I don't know what type of effects it's going to have on him. You know, the older he gets, but he used to act out and things like that. But he's you can just see the change. You know,
Yeah.
she's too young to know the to feel the effects of that yet. So she's beautiful. She's happy. She's just a smiley little girl, man.
Mm. Can we talk about Rachel?
Yeah.
You're divorced, but that doesn't mean you didn't love her. Still, I mean, I don't know what it was like for you, but I do think, I don't know. I feel like I'm just curious. Like,
So the mother of your children, you're always gonna love, right?
yeah, for sure.
You, no matter what happens, there was a time in your life that you entrusted this person with creating life. So you should always have love and respect for the mother of your children or the father of your children.
Yeah,
And so I've always wanted the best for my ex spouses, right? I loved her a lot. I didn't realize the trauma all of the trauma that she experienced in her life growing up, which made her make these types of decisions. I feel like her decision to take Kyrrus out to Virginia was she has the opportunity not to work anymore. She's tired, from life. We're all tired from life. She has the opportunity not to work. She can raise kids. That's what she's a mother through and through, and that's what she wanted. But I believe that she took Kyrrus because she was also scared to go to Virginia by herself. And taking Kyrrus was taking part of her home with her, right?
yeah,
And so the decisions that she made, I was very, very, very angry with her at first. I've been able to find forgiveness, learning after the fact about some of her trauma that she suffered through, and it makes me understand why she made some of these decisions, even though they still shouldn't have been made. It allows me to have some compassion for her, and I have forgave her for making those decisions, even as hard as it is. But yeah, I love her. I love her. I've always loved her. My ex-wife now, the mother of my 3-year-old, we're divorced, and I have a lot of respect for her and love for her. She does her best to be a good mom. I do my best to be a good dad, and we just have to do what's best for the children. And some decisions are made where you wouldn't agree that was in the best interest of your kid. But for me, I make every decision for my kids.
Yeah. I just think like that'd be such a weird one because I'm sure you're just grieving over her and feel sad for her in her last moments, and that's hard for her. But also like, especially early on, right after, I'm sure there's lots of anger, like there naturally would be. So I just wanted to ask, your kid now, what's his name?
Ezekiel.
Ezekiel. I was gonna ask you like what keeps you going, but I think I know the answer.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It is so tough. Anything you do in life now feels so much harder.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But for me, being a new parent, so there's 14 years between having a
and
kid.
Ezekiel. Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to do it alone. I don't know how to be a parent anymore. And then with the added trauma on top of that, I'm so hyper vigilant that it just absolutely consumes all of my time when I'm with him.
Just very protective of Ezekiel.
Yeah, I can't.
And he's 3.
He's 3. He'll be 4 here.
I mean, that's an age where they're getting into everything, and they're
yeah. He's autistic. He's nonverbal. The first part of that, you find any reason to blame yourself for stuff.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm just like, I was in the midst of trauma.
And still are.
Yeah. I was in like the thick of it, right?
Yeah.
I just moved back to Utah. I stayed with my ex-wife. She was grieving as well. We found comfort in each other. We were never back together or anything, but we found comfort in each other because we were both grieving the loss of Kai.
Yeah.
And then she got pregnant, and so the whole thing of, I don't know, it's really hard to raise a child that needs extra attention.
When you're grieving, like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, like, it's so hard.
But it's hard to raise a regular child.
Yeah, this is just exactly what I was going to say. And then, and what, like, again, like, just because you went through the absolute worst thing, Maui, it doesn't mean life's going to get, like, it doesn't care.
Nope.
It doesn't care.
It has no shits to give you. Like, it doesn't care.
Yeah. It's not keeping track of who's dealing with what.
Yeah, and that's the hard part, right? Is like, you sit here and you're like, man, if you do good and you're a good person, good things are supposed to happen. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's true anymore.
No,
But then what I learned is, well, that's ultimately the truest sense of being good is, it doesn't mean anything. Can you still choose to be good?
And then you still do it, correct. Yeah.
I think that's when that's actually good. You're actually doing it now because
that's a really
it actually isn't going to matter. You don't get insurance. You don't get brownie points.
Yeah. You're not getting a gold star for doing it.
The world will actually be the exact same if you just drank yourself to death, actually. Like, It wouldn't matter. Can you still choose the right path, though?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
I think that's what I've learned is, like, I kind of found this more pure form of goodness. And what I've realized now is that was my wife, Courtney. Like, that's who Courtney was. She was so good, and she never did it for anything. Just because she could.
Because that's who she was.
And then I realized that, and It's weird, like what you learn about. Like I'm sure you did this with Kai. Like all the things you learned about him after after he died. Like talking to him and then rethinking about things in your life and all the things you learned from him. That's kind of a cool thing to process too through the grief journey. Maui, what else? Before we get to your favorite movies, anything else you want to mention with your 90% or how you're doing day to day, or anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap it up?
I don't know, man. You know, the 90%, you just you have to find a reason for it. You have to find something to believe in. I always say, not like, oh, I have to believe in God and I have to do this. You can believe in whatever you want, but you have to find something to believe in. Otherwise, that depression is going to consume you, and then you're just going to end it. And if you're going to end it, why are you fighting it? Just end it. But if you're not, then find something to believe in, and that'll help you push into your 90%, you know?
Yeah. I think that's something that I'm learning is I used to think like, okay, why did this happen? Maybe I'll find out when I die or like when it's revealed to me. But then I'm like, no, I think that's up to me, like why it happened. Like how
Right.
I respond to it is gonna make like why it happened. And that, yeah, I think you're right, man.
What
You have to
purpose are you
find
going to...
something. And that's why so many people have come on here that they've done something with their grief, tried to funnel it into something productive, whether it's a 3K or a foundation or a golf tournament or whatever it is. But yeah, finding something. And you know what I think, dude? It's helping other people, man.
It does. It
Like if you
does.
can help other people with it, that's one of the best feelings I get from it. Or
That's...
connecting with someone like you
I...
is just like I don't feel crazy because the other thing is, like I still hurt so bad. It's been 3 years, and so when I see you, it's been 5 years, and you're still just hurting. It makes me feel good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry to say that, but like,
No, dude.
it makes me feel like, because sometimes at Maui, I'm like, am I not doing good? Like, should I not be this sad? Like, am I? And then when I go on my podcast, I'm like, yeah, like I'm normal. Like
Yep.
we're hurting,
You're
and it's
absolutely
fine.
normal, man. You're doing great.
Yeah, and whether I'm interviewing someone that their thing happened 20 years ago or 5 years ago, it still hurts, and I'm just like, thank you. Like, okay, I think I'm doing okay then.
Yeah, man. I think it's great that you do this podcast because it does give you a new perspective, or it eases some things for you, right? Like just like that example. I would, I would love to help as many people as possible.
No, like we never even chatted, and you helped. That moment I had with Matt, when I'm like, well, tell me a story then, Matt, and he told me your story. That impacted me. Like, and I didn't even meet you yet, so trust me, you're helping a lot of people more than you think. I think.
Thank you, man.
And I don't know if it's I've been terrified of this episode. And I think it's because that instance I had with Matt, like it was so intertwined with my grief that I just wasn't sure like how I would handle it emotionally with you. But I think it went okay. But like you mean a lot to me. I hope you know that. It's hard to get guys on the podcast, to be honest with you. Like
really,
I think it's harder for guys to open up and to cry and to
I agree.
to do that. And so thank you for your example.
You're welcome, man. I wish there was more platforms just for males to do this so they can see it's okay. You know, I would love to, because at first I was looking for groups. I was like, where? I don't know anybody.
That's how it was. Like and then I met Craig Lithgow. He lost his wife and 2 kids in a car, and so I'm like, okay, and and then you.
Yeah, my friend Lando Paloa. Do you know him?
I don't.
He lost his son, and he was looking for groups, and he said he went to a couple of grief groups, but it was all women. And he was just like,
like
none of the guys here are willing to talk. They wouldn't open up, and felt like he was the only one. So like having a male grief circles and things like that. I think it's great.
Yeah, I do too.
I'll just have
You need to have
it.
more of it, I think.
Yeah, I'll just have to do like a male podcast or something.
You should, dude.
I should.
Maui. Do you like speaking of movies, do you like the movie Maui?
What movie, Maui?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Moana.
I mixed that one up. That was one of Frankie's favorite movies, though.
So I do like it. The hardest thing was before it came out, everybody coming up and being like, "Oh man, this new movie's coming out. You're in it." I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" I never even heard of it, right? Because I was so out of watching kids movies because my kids were already older.
Yeah.
And then when it came out, I was like, "Oh man, I don't know how good it's gonna be. Me being Polynesian." But I watched it and I was like, "Yeah, it's good.
It's good.
Yeah,
what can I say except you're welcome?" Can we do? Was Kai a movie guy? Can you list maybe some of his favorite movies and then yours, and we'll be done?
Yeah. So Kyrrus and I had a tradition where I would always take him to the theater and we'd watch the next horror movie.
Nice.
We were both huge horror movie
fans.
Like it. And now I have nobody to watch horror movies with.
Dude, what's it like watching horror movies? Like with what you went through?
So
is that just like
hard? There's definitely horror or not. Anytime there's somebody getting their
but that's like every movie now.
I didn't really. Yeah, exactly.
The same thing with car crashes. Like apparently every movie has a car crash scene. I didn't know that.
Me neither.
Until after the accident. Like everyone's what the hell?
Exactly. That's what I noticed. I was like, holy shit! Like I never even noticed this before, and now every single movie has this. So yes, those movies give me a some sort of biological reaction, like a physical.
It might
reaction.
be good for you, like exposure therapy, maybe type of thing. Like instead of running for anyway.
I don't know.
I just had to ask. It just hopped into my brain. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that has to be hard for you though.
It is.
Okay, but you like horror movies.
I like horror movies. I love like 80s action. I love a lot of movies.
I'm gonna like your list, I think.
Yeah, mine's pretty cliche, I think. But Kyrrus loved the classic horror movies, so like Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers.
Oh yeah.
You know, that was him and his brother, Caden. They loved that stuff. Kai was a Jason guy. He liked Jason a lot. And Freddy. He loved Freddy's claws.
Dude, you should get like a sick tattoo of like Jason or Freddy. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, I love the look when people get them. I love that stuff. So he liked Freddy, the Freddy movies a lot because Freddy was kind of funny, right? He would always joke around and stuff before he kills people. And the last movie we watched together, he liked a lot, which was the first part of the new It movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he loved that.
Yeah, that It movie was a big deal.
I couldn't tell you like his favorite movies. He loved horror. He loved action. He was such a kind-hearted. I remember him being downstairs one time and he was watching Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to him from upstairs while I'm doing my thing, and I hear him just crying. I was like, "What the hell?" So I like run down there, and he was little still. He was probably like 6 or 7. He was watching this movie and he was crying at the movie at the end when the wild thing is crying because the boy's leaving. And it was just so impactful how soft and caring he was. But
I love that story, yeah.
Yeah, anything horror for him.
And then Where the Wild Things Are randomly in there.
Yeah.
I read the book. That was one of my favorite
I love the book. I cry on that movie too. I cry on every single movie nowadays, bro. It
gets to you now pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, what about you?
Top 3. Are we going 3, 2, 1?
Yeah, preferably.
3's hard because I have like 3 that are tied for my 3 spot.
We can take honorable mentions.
Which is Braveheart, Gladiator, and The Patriot.
Oh, yeah.
So those 3 movies.
They are cliche, but great movies. Like, what do you want me to say?
That's what I'm saying. Like, all my picks are pretty cliche.
Gladiator 2 is coming out, too, by the way.
I know. I'm not sure how excited I am about it.
It's a mistake.
Yeah.
They're going to ruin everything.
Yeah, that's...
Like, why are they doing it? It's
That's
a money
what I'm
grab.
worried about.
I get it.
Yeah.
It was so good, though. Leave it alone.
They're like, we'll throw Denzel Washington in there.
We'll
Everybody
we'll
will
fill
watch
it with
it.
water, and they're pirates now.
Yeah, it's true. They really did that shit, though.
I know.
That's freaking nuts. Anyways, number 2 is cliche as well. It's Tombstone.
Classic Western, maybe the best Western.
It's probably the best.
Yeah,
Western.
You got like the old school, like dirty hair, like those ones. They're so old though. I like
yeah. Clint Eastwood when he was
dirty hair
prime back in his westerns were probably pretty badass, but not in my time.
Good pick.
And then number 1 is Gangs of New York.
Yeah, with Leonardo.
I love that movie.
I haven't seen that movie forever. I forgot about that movie. That's a good movie.
When I first watched that movie, I was younger, teenager, and I was like, this is when I should have been born. I should have been born in this time and era. And I should have been, this is what I want to do. But that was back in the day when I was like invincible, right? Yeah. So I absolutely love the movie. Leo's one of my favorite actors. Daniel Day-Lewis, can't go wrong. Like, Gangs of New York is
like a 3-hour film, too.
It's so long. Yeah.
I need to watch that.
It's great. We should watch it sometime, bro.
Yeah,
I'll watch it with you.
Me and Ryan.
Hell yeah. I'd be down.
That's a good movie list. Is that number 1? Gangs of New York? Gangs of New York, Tombstone, Braveheart, Gladiator, and what was the other one?
And The Patriot. And The Patriot's hard because he loses 2 of his sons. But
Aim small, miss small.
What about you?
My favorite movies?
Yeah.
I always do the same ones. Like, I love Quentin Tarantino movies. I love the Coen brother movies. So all those are up on my list.
I love Kill Bills.
I'm trying to think of any. Yeah, the Kill Bills are great.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of a good movie I've seen recently. I'm not really. I don't know. How about let's do comedies real quick.
Okay.
So some of the comedies I like are Dumb and Dumber.
You like stupid comedy?
Do you know what comedy I love is Knocked Up?
Knocked Up?
I laughed my ass off that whole movie, start to finish.
I watched it once. I think I got a chuckle here and there, but it definitely wasn't I
liked it.
I like more raunchy comedy probably.
Okay.
One of my favorite comedies is Bad Santa.
I don't know if I've seen that one. Okay, real quick. Favorite Christmas movie, and then we're done. 'Tis the Season.
Oh, man. Yeah, it is. Man, I don't know if it's got to be Home Alone because Kyrrus and Caden, they love
Home Alone. Classic.
Home Alone. If you wanted to go more deep, it'd be
I like the old school cartoon Grinch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Well, Maui, thanks for coming on, man.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your example. And we should hit up a movie sometime.
Definitely, I'm down.
And life's 10% what happens to you and 90% what you're going to do about it.